President Obama has been the most ignorant president in our history.
The economy, President Trump can't seem to get past his predecessor on a whole array of issues. Look here. Look at this.
They asked me, what about race relations in the United States? Now, I have to say they were pretty bad under Barack Obama, that I can tell you. So President Obama had separation. I'm the one that brought them together. Most of the ISIS fighters that we captured, we, not Obama, we captured them, me. And we've gotten rid of a lot of really bad pieces that were signed by President Obama, believe me. President Obama has been the most ignorant president in our history. When I took over our military, we didn't have ammunition.
I don't know what to say, David Plouffe. I mean, this man's not a gentleman, and I don't know why he obsessed.
Pretend that today marks the end of our economic problems, nor does it constitute all of what we're going to have to do to turn our economy around. But today does mark the beginning of the end, the beginning of what we need to do to create jobs for Americans scrambling in the wake of layoffs, the beginning of what we need to do to provide relief for families worried that they won't be able to pay next month's bills.
Welcome back to Harvard. That was former President Barack Obama back in 2009 at the signing of his signature Recovery Act. And yesterday, Obama commemorated the 11th anniversary of that event, writing on Twitter that it paved the way for more than a decade of economic growth and the longest streak of job creation in American history. Well, that's actually all true, but not in President Trump's book of revisionist history. Trump tweeted, "Did you hear the latest con job? President Obama is now trying to take credit for the economic boom taking place under the Trump administration. If Dems won in 2016, the USA would be in a big economic depression and military trouble right now." But the numbers tell a different story, actually. If you look at these numbers, President Trump gloated that his presidency would bring 4, 5, or even 6% GDP growth each year. But in his first 3 years, the average was 2.5%. That is only slightly better than the last 3 years of President Obama. That was 2.5 versus 2.3 growth rates each year for the last 3 years of Obama and the first 3 years of Trump. As for jobs, since Trump took office, the economy has added an average of 189,000 jobs per month. But during the final 3 years of Obama's administration, his average of producing jobs was 224,000, several more. For more, I'm joined by David Plouffe, former Obama campaign manager, and Michael Beschloss, NBC News presidential historian. David, thank you for joining us. First of all, the psychological part of this. What is Trump's problem?
Well, he's a lying narcissist. So we know that. We're reminded of that every day. Well, let's not forget, Barack Obama won re-election in 2012 with an unemployment rate of almost 8% because people thought he would fight for people like them. And I think voters generally don't view the economy through macroeconomic statistics. And I think there's a very powerful argument to be made against Trump on the economy, on the tax cuts for billionaires. They want the companies that didn't create jobs. And eventually we'll have a nominee to do that. But I think what's interesting to me, Chris, is if you were just giving Trump political advice, he might say, listen, I didn't agree with what Obama did, but compared to this cast of characters, he's actually like a centrist. But his ego and his narcissism prevents him from doing that. So, I think he is quite vulnerable, though. And at some point, our primary will be over. And job number one for our nominee will be to prosecute a winning economic case against Donald Trump.
But aren't you curious about when Trump went to psychological war with Barack Obama? Was it the White House Correspondents' Dinner when Barack took him down rather brilliantly? Just took him down. You could see his face. There was some jutting of the jaw there. There was something going on there at that moment, I thought. What do you think?
Donald Trump is here tonight. Now, I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac? Say what you will about Mr. Trump. He certainly would bring some change to the White House. All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience. For example, no, seriously, just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice, at the steakhouse, the men's cooking team did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. And there was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership. And so ultimately you didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night.
Well, that might have intensified his hatred. But if you look at his, and it's really hard to do, but if you look at his tweeting history, which goes back a long, long time, his hatred for Obama, I think, was there in the beginning, maybe intensified through that personal episode, but went through all of 2012 and really through 2016. So, but I think at the core, Donald Trump can't give credit to anybody for anything but himself. I mean, occasionally he'll say good things about our troops, but I think even that's a challenge for him. And, that's what makes me so concerned about 4 more years of this guy, is someone who is this much of a narcissist, somebody who's this ungenerous, who's not intellectually curious. At some point, he's going to be faced with a real crisis, and I think we should all be very, very scared about that.
Well, he has 2 things. This sort of fits the pattern. One is he wants to expunge everything to do with his impeachment, like remove the judges, he wants to get rid of everybody. He wants to get rid of Mueller, get rid of Pelosi, anything to do with it, he wants to blame. He wants to blame Mitt Romney for it. Everybody has to be blamed so that he can have his history book that says he wasn't impeached. But as Pelosi points out, the history book will say he was impeached, David, and there's nothing he can do with all his erasure to change that.
Yeah, well, he's kind of the inverse of Roosevelt. I mean, Trump walks loudly and carries a small stick and a pretty big bag of grievances. But I think, listen, he lives in a reality distortion field. I'm not even sure he thinks he can rewrite history books. It just makes him feel better. To Michael Beschloss's point, Trump is a marketer. I mean, that's what he has been his entire life. And he understands the power of social media. He's not relying on journalists to interpret events or economic data. He's just going to shout as loudly as he can into his phone and create his own version. And again, only he knows, I guess, but I'm not sure how much of this is to convince others versus himself. But he sees himself, he often talks about how he's more popular than Abraham Lincoln. He sees himself as this grand historical figure. And that's why I think he is more obsessed with re-election than any president we've ever seen. Maybe more obsessed than all of them. And they all had more than a passing interest, because he understands that if he gets defeated, he is going to be historically, I think, in a much more challenging position than he already is with all his lies and distortions. And so that's why I think, to Michael's point, he started running for re-election the day he put his hand on the Bible on January 20th, 2017. We've never seen anything like it.